misconceptions about how millennials engage in church?
I think also for me as a millennial, I think once I left Cathedral in college and I was able to experience other churches and how they functioned, I was able to see churches coming out in 90 minutes. And I was able to also realize just some more casualness, right, with church that I've never really experienced at Cathedral, because Cathedral has a caliber, right? So going to other churches and realizing that I'm still getting the same word, I'm still walking away feeling rested. And when I would tell my parents about church, they're like, you got out in 90 minutes? Like, what did you do? And I'm like, praise and worship. We prayed, I heard the word, and I went home. And I was able to go about my day. So I think also, the misconception of like, you're rushing God. I'm not rushing God. None of us are rushing God, right? Or even if we're looking at church, unfortunately, on Monday at work on YouTube to see other churches that are happening. I mean, I'm not always up, for West Coast time to watch service, but there's a pastor I like to hear from. So those listen to other pastors and listen to other words, I think for many older generations is like, no, this is your church and this is who you're supposed to listen to. But hearing other words and other fruits to help you grow is so important for millennials, because we'll change jobs like this, right? So why not hear words from other people? Because that's something that we're used to on a regular basis.
Amen.
And in my opinion, it all does come back to that factor of change where, like my grandparents, I can guarantee you that they were not wearing casual clothes, going to a church service on Sunday. And so because of that, even though times are changing, some people feel that in order to get the experience they had, you need to do exactly like they do. So it's not a matter of what clothes you're wearing, it's a matter of what you feel. But sometimes people feel that unless you do things this specific way, you're not going to get the blessing of the Lord.
Amen. I think it's also a misconception that God doesn't want to, or he can't use millennials. I believe that God can use anyone. He could use Zeke. He could use a toddler. He could use anyone to spread the gospel. And sometimes, not the dressing part was an example, but leadership. When you commit yourself to the Lord, and this is where I want to live, and this is what I want to do, elders and ministers and bishops, God can use you. He can use you just the way you are. We had a leadership meeting, and Deacon Guest said, why can't we wear, getting back to dress, why can't we wear jeans and sneakers? And I said, yes. For a long time, I dressed up today, but for a long time, you did not go to the Sanctified Church or any church coming up in my era unless you were dressed. Mm-hmm. But Zeke said it, and you said it, God is more concerned with your heart, what's in your heart. And really, now I've been on the journey for a long time. So now it's time to bring in millennials. It's time to take Bishop Zeke or Elder or Minister Edwards. It's time. And we're ready. The harvest is ready to receive what you have to give.
There is a historical component to that. I don't know if we have time to deal with it or not. So I think seek first to understand and then be understood, right? Why this emphasis on dressing up? And I think I am a child of a baby boomer, right? Mm-hmm. And so for us, particularly as African Americans, Sunday was the only day you had to dress up, because all through the week, the blue collar jobs that most of our ancestors worked did not allow them to come in shirt and tie. And so Sunday becomes the day where I can show off my Sunday best. I can
Mhm.
dress up. And when you think collectively as a community, that's what we all did. One of the challenges of that is that we take this idea of our Sunday best and we codify it and make it a law to the point where it paralyzes us when someone else comes in jeans as if they can't reach God the way that I can because they didn't put on the appropriate attire. And I think it speaks to, again, the need for change, the need for generations to recognize that God is far more concerned with what's going on in your heart than what you put on your attire this morning. And at the same time, honoring and understanding where some of these traditions came from and recognizing that that was a time where our people did that and they did it for a reason. Thank God we moved beyond that where now I don't have to wear my Sunday best just on Sunday, right? But that can truly come in and allow some of these barriers to fall away so we can now really engage in worship together as a community.
But I do want to say, I believe that they dressed up because all the week they were boy, they were girl. But when I put on my suit and my dress and my hat and my gloves, oh, I'm Mrs. So and so. I'm Deaconess so and so. I think it also comes because we didn't know who we were.
Yeah.
We
Elder, when you say boy and girl, can you sort of expand and explain that, what you're talking about there?
All right, I want to say, especially in the South, our people weren't treated right. They weren't addressed as man, woman. They were addressed as boy. They were addressed as girl. So on Sunday morning, when I put on my clothes, I identify with being a woman, a man, but all during the week, no. And I really think it's because I didn't know who I was, or I was beat down, so I couldn't recognize that was greatness in me. I couldn't recognize that my clothes don't make me great. It's what's inside of me. So the church have always been what they could encourage to build us up. When we would come into the church, if you felt low, if you felt like you were a nobody, the song they sang, the word that was preached, oh, I am somebody. So that's where I wanted to take it there.
That's what I wanted.
Okay, so that identified, so I learned myself. This doesn't make me. I'm dressed up. This doesn't change who I am. I'm Doretha whether I have on my raggedy jeans. I am somebody. All right, stop it, Doretha.
But it's important to know, right? Because we didn't live in those times, right? But to know what our grandparents and great grandparents went through, we understand, right? And with that, time has changed and everything has changed. So we change with the times. So, but that was great. Thank you very much. What's the biggest difference between church now versus when you were coming up? And do you think these changes are good or bad?
Okay. All right. I think change is good. Oh, I'm sorry. I know change is good. I was brought up in my childhood, born in the South, Sand Hill Baptist Church, the Mourners Bench. That's where you came down to receive the Lord. Raised in a sanctified church. This is getting on my nerves. The same thing. But in the sanctified church, but I do thank God for my beginning. I thank God for my structure. I thank God for in the sanctified church, I learned what was commitment, how to be faithful, not only to God, to my church, and to my family. But in the sanctified church, there was no makeup, no pants, strict rule. But I know I benefit from that beginning. And I believe in change. I believe we have to evolve. We have to evolve. Like a butterfly in a cocoon, it has to, for the making. I believe that's what I learned in my childhood is for now. I believe if I had learned how to be committed, how to stand, how to go through pandemic, coronavirus, no church, thinking I had to come inside the building to be the church or to have church. But I've learned I can have church at 1126 West 5th Street. I've learned I am the church. So I have benefit. I even benefit from the pandemic. Because being home with family, learn how to get along with your family. And then learning how to get into God myself. So many times we come to church and Bishop gives us the word. He gives us the word. He tells us, but what happens when there's no word? You only get the word on Sunday or you only get the word on Wednesday. So change is good. God knew that we would be right here. He knew that we would be wearing these masks that I'm trying to adjust. He knew that, but he's equipping us for this generation, and he's equipping us to go through. Pastor?
That's such a loaded question. Read it one more time. Read the question one more time. I want to make sure I get this.
You want to hit it right?
I want to hit it.
What's the biggest difference between church now versus when you were coming up? And do you think these changes are good or bad?
Okay. So, yeah, that's really a loaded question for me personally, because I grew up in a different denomination. So I guess similar to you, Elder. I grew up AME, and then I came over to Baptist as an adult after having pastored. And so there are those changes that are sort of experiential and denominational. But I think globally, the change I think about is that when I was younger, or there was a time when the church was all that we had. And I say that not just for African Americans, but there was a time when in America, nothing else happened on Sunday. Nothing. Right? You still had your football, but outside of that, nothing else happened. Nothing. There were no youth sports. There was really nothing else going on. And so if that was what's happening sort of societally, for African Americans, is even more focused in that, there was nothing going on. Like there are still cities that have blue light laws, which means that liquor stores aren't open on Sundays. And so that's sort of where we were. And not only that, not only was there not anything else going on, but for many of us, church was the only outlet we had.
That's true.
The only community outlet we had, the only place we could gather, the only place we could go and do things. And what we've seen over time, both in our country and both in our community, is that there are other things that are competing for that same time that church dominates.
Amen.
Good, bad, or indifference. That's what it is. And so now churches have attempted to adjust to meet some of those needs. And so, even here at our church, we have multiple worship experiences so that people can do different things with their day. You can come at 6:30 and be done by 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then do whatever else for your day. You can come at 9 and be done, or you can still come at the normal 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock hour. But in a lot of ways, it shows how church has adjusted to the new realities that we face. But also, I think it begs the question, what does it mean now for us that there's so many other competing activities, right? And where does church still have the same priority in the life of members that it once held before? And is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I don't think that's a a symptom of millennials and Gen Zers. I think that's something that you all have just been born into. To be perfectly honest, it's been Generation X that's been at the helm of doing a lot of these things, right? And so it is such a complex question because really I think what it asks is, on the whole, are we better Christians today as a Christian community than we were in comparison to, 50 years ago? And because then that tells you whether or not these changes have been positive or negative, right? Or it could tell you that. So, it's that's such a loaded question. I think what I'm encouraged by is that there are still young people who are coming to Christ. That there's still, there are still millennials and Generation Zers who recognize that having a relationship with Christ and being in a church community is still important. And so at its core, I think that is what I would walk away with it from. That, the church is still growing, that as most generations do, you go to college and you sort of, quote unquote, leave church and you try and do your own thing. But then when you come back home, your butt is in the seat on Sunday every week, or you recognize the importance of church, the importance of community. And so that's sort of, I think, where I would settle on that. I don't think that answers the question, but I think that's where I would settle.
I see what you're saying, where it's like different eras will spawn different situations, but regardless of the situation, the good thing is that people are coming to Christ, regardless of how old or young you are, regardless of your situation.
Amen.